We kick things off with a shady dream, but then our hero wakes up after living out his fantasy. It turns out that he was playing a game, and he might have fallen asleep while doing so. The name of this game is Valkyria Chronicles, and our hero sure seems to like it because he was halfway done with the whole story as well. Even though this is a virtual reality game, our hero feels tired, almost as if he was actually acting out his intrusive thoughts on the cute girls he was seeing in his dream. Suddenly, a stat board shows up in front of him, and he has no idea how this has happened. It seems to be the same one that's in the game, but the character being displayed is not the one that our hero had chosen. He tries to log out of the game, but it doesn't seem to be working. This is a problem because the gamer boy has to leave for work, and the game seems to be experiencing some kind of bug. The worst part is that the screen doesn't even have a logout button, which makes the whole thing seem shady. Now, our hero gets a notification stating that he has mail, so he decides to check it out. We learn that his name is Canon, as can be seen in the mail, and it thanks him for something he has done, which he does not know of. Canon is also congratulated for something, so he decides to read it properly to get a better idea of his current situation. This is where things become a bit strange. We learn that our hero has been reincarnated in another world from a parallel universe, which is very far from Earth. It's because the person writing the mail had created a maze game called Dungeon Seed a long time ago. It happens to be another game that Canon was playing. And since he was able to clear all the missions, the data he collected was amazing and valuable. We learn that the person who sent this mail is actually a god named Gaia, who is of this world which is also like Earth. In order to show some appreciation, Gaia had decided to reincarnate Canon into this world the moment he lost his life back on the original Earth. In this new life, Canon will have to deal with monsters and other creatures, because this fantasy world is a mixture of Valkyria Chronicles and Dungeon Seed. Luckily, Canon will be blessed with all the spells, magic, and power that he had possessed in both those games. Gaia continues to explain that the gods of Canon's world had also approved of this reincarnation, so there's no need to worry about the details. One last thing to remember though, is that Canon has already left his old world, and even his body has decomposed there, so he has no way of returning back to Earth. There's a shield surrounding Canon right now, but it isn't free, so Gaia has made sure to give our hero some useful skills which will help him earn a living. Canon checks out the photo that Gaia has left behind for him, and is shocked to see that she is a cute girl with a curvy body. Our hero takes some time to get used to the fact that he has been reincarnated, but then he dresses up into his robe and goes downstairs. He's in a hotel, and the owner tells him that breakfast is already done, so she will have to charge him if he wishes to eat anything. Canon doesn't mind, and he orders for a nice meal, after which he asks for the bill. However, to his surprise, he notices that his money gets paid back into his fantasy world account. This reminds him of the golden rule that he had come across while playing most of his other games. Basically, this rule states that our hero will not need to pay for anything at all. As a matter of fact, even if he does end up paying for an item, then the money gets paid back into his account. It also might have something to do with what Gaia had mentioned in the message. After all, Canon does have a whole new set of skills which he can use to his advantage. Now that the formalities are done with, Canon sits down to enjoy his food, and he starts with some bread that tastes much better than he had expected. Our hero finishes his meal, and then he figures that he should explore the city and get as much information as he can. He cleans up after his food and decides to head straight towards the guild headquarters. We learn that the name of this kingdom is Eldoria, and the name of the capital is Eldoria. Canon enters the guild headquarters, and he notices all the receptionists talking to people who want to go on adventures. He finds an empty spot with an old man, so he goes to him and mentions that it's his first time here. The reception man asks him if he wants to register or be hired for a task, and our hero says that he needs to get himself registered before doing anything else. The old man gets to work and hands over a form to Canon where he will have to give his name and his specialization. On top of that, he will also need to sign a seal in the sheet in order to complete his registration. The old man is actually a bit shocked to see that Canon did not go to the cute girl in the other counter. He even tells our hero that he has wasted a chance to get with her. However, Canon is a master of this game, so he knows all the tricks that come with it. He says that waiting in line at the other counter would simply be a waste of his time, because he has come here to become an adventurer. He hasn't been with a girl in a very long time, so it makes sense for him not to try for one right now. The old man is pleased to hear this and agrees with everything that Canon has said. He goes on to loudly declare that this is an adventurer's guild and not a place for boys and girls to flirt. He also reveals his name to be Garand, who is an important member of staff in this guild. He offers his hand to Canon, but our hero is a bit wary of shaking hands with a stranger so soon in this world. Garand is impressed once again, but Kanon says that he's actually extra careful in general, which is why he doesn't have any friends. He checks out Garand's stats but learns that he has used camouflage to block all his skills. Now, Garand tells Kanon that he should probably choose a task that would sorcery because he's assuming that's what our hero's skills are. Kanon is confused to hear this, but then he realizes that Garand might be saying this because he's seen his robe. The guildman tells our hero that he should start off with some easy tasks to test his ability. He goes on to suggest a quest that involves collecting herbs, but also asks Kanon not to lose his life in the process. After all, the most important thing is to keep yourself safe first. As expected, Kanon is not pleased to hear this because he's not the type to go around collecting herbs. However, he does recall that all his games had started out the same way as well, only to become spicier later on. Garand reminds our hero that if he does decide to abandon his mission, then he should try to give away the herbs he's collected to the other adventurers who might need them. At the end of the day, it's the one who delivers the goods that takes the prize. Either way, it'll serve as practice for Kanon, even though he's a master of his craft. With that, our hero bids farewell to Garand and sets out on his mission. He laments that fact that he has to do such a simple task, but there is no other way around it, so he will have to comply. He heads over to the forest area and begins his quest for the medicinal herbs. It takes a while, but Kanon is finally able to get what he has come for. His back hurts, but at least his mission was a success, and now he can test out a couple of things. He takes a look at some buffaloes grazing nearby and wonders which one of them will be his target. He chooses one that looks a little tasty and begins his testing process. Basically, the only reason why Kanon is staying back in the forest is to see what the goddess Gaia has given him. It makes sense, because he can then use his powers to their best advantage. He needs to take a look at all the stats being shown on his screen, and then he clears his mind to launch a proper move. With no one around, our hero does not have to worry about getting caught, and is free to do as he pleases, so he summons a small piece of rock in his hand. He launches this rock straight at the buffalo that he had chosen earlier. As expected, he lands a bullseye on the target and takes it down with just one shot. Even Kanon is unable to believe what he has just done, because he wanted to kick things off just by scaring the buffalo. As of now, Kanon has figured that his skill of throwing has way too much power, so he has to set the MP to a decent number to ensure he doesn't end up using it often. He has another problem on his hands, which is the fact that the other buffaloes are not too pleased with what he has just done to their friend. Normally, this would be the end of the road for a normal adventure, but that's not what Kanon is about. He decides to take on the buffaloes, and he starts with his fire magic. Our hero unleashes his flame bullets upon the animals, but it only takes one of them to cause an explosion so massive that it can take down an army of dragons as well. The devastation on display is of a whole other level, so Kanon feels a bit awkward after what he's just done. He does not get why there is so much extra damage because he only used a basic skill here. However, the flames are spreading fast, and more buffaloes have come to the scene after noticing what happened to the previous herd. Our hero wonders what he should do here, because he doesn't want to risk another fire bullet on these beasts. The buffaloes charge at Kanon, so it's not like he can just stand there, so he decides to attack them one after the other with his bare hands. As he continues to destroy the buffaloes, Kanon realizes that he's not at rank B or rank A, but rather at rank SS, which is the highest form of magic. He manages to take down enough buffaloes to scare the others into running away, and he thinks about how one of his S-rank spells can cause more damage than thousands of lower rank spells. He figures that he should try to only use C-rank spells unless he is up against a superhuman enemy. With his mission completed, Kanon heads back to the city so that he can give up the herbs and get his bounty. However, when he arrives, he can see a lot of slaves who are moving to another flea market. He figures that a slave trade is going to happen, which means that lots of cute girls will be on display. He notices one such girl standing out amongst all the others, and she is curvy beyond imagination, so Kanon lets his intrusive thoughts break free. He gazes at all the cute slave girls and then thinks back to the mail he got from Goddess Gaia. He goes through all the points she had mentioned, and what stands out the most is that he does not have a mission to save the world over here. This means he can truly live his life the way he wants to, without having to worry about innocent lives. Essentially, he can be an adventurer for fun. And now the cute image from Gaia makes more sense. Our hero has finally found his purpose in this new life, and it is to make every cute girl his slave, so that he can build a harem and keep them all in a dungeon. We move some time further into the future, where our hero comes across a giant cave which is known to be a nest for goblins. It turns out that Kanon has to do this quest because when he accidentally took the lives of all those buffaloes, his rank increased directly to C. Getting rid of goblins is a C-rank mission, but Kanon has no desire to do it at all. In order to understand how this whole thing came about, we are taken to a few days before this moment in a flashback. We see Garand, who tells our hero that he has no other choice but to give him this goblin quest because he has become a rank C adventurer now. Kanon asks if he can say no to this mission, but the guildman says that he can only do so if he has a good enough reason. On top of that, if he is to refuse the request of a guild master, then he can be stripped of his status as an adventurer too. Since there is no other option, Kanon will have to fill out the request form, but he makes a fussy face while doing so. It turns out that the target place is actually a day's walk away from the royal capital, as it is located within the depths of the forest area. Some people were sent to deal with the goblins before, but none of them came back, which is a bit odd, because these goblins have not harmed or attacked any of the villagers nearby. Garen now tells Kanon that his registration will be deleted if he says no, which was why he now has to do his research for this task. Our hero wonders why Garen would give him a task like this one, and believes it might be due to the fact that he doesn't like his face. Anyway, Kanon wants to see cute girls, but he must keep his focus if he is to succeed in this mission. After all, the only thing that he should take care of is his guild card, which is like a free access pass to all the areas of the kingdom. The main problem, though, is that he will never be able to build his harem of cute girls if he keeps doing adventures like this. Garen allows Kanon to calm down for a bit, and then he tries to make him feel better by saying he does not need to fight the goblins. Kanon only has to investigate the nest and check if there are actually goblins inside or if something suspicious is going on. He is free to escape from the scene if he gets caught up in a dangerous situation. Now, we are back to the present where Kanon has finally entered the cave to check out the nest. He goes through the whole of the first floor, but doesn't find anything of use. He turns on his map skill to navigate through the cave, and then he enters the second floor. This is when his stat screen shows him the presence of two other people, named Arisia and Rina. Kanon can't figure why they're here, but he can see that their HP and MP are almost over, which means that they could be fighting against some goblins. Kanon finally activates his hero mode and rushes to the scene in order to help out these girls. He reaches just in the nick of time, and we can see that the girls are both cute and curvy. They both notice the presence of another person, and before they know it, Kanon is slicing down goblins with ease. Our hero takes down a whole gang of goblins within a few seconds, so some of the survivors try to attack him from behind. The girls notice this, so they call out to Kanon in order to warn him of the sneak attack. But this is not needed due to the fact that our hero has special weapons as well. He takes down the goblins with a reverse shot and points out that his weapons are making the difference here. Kanon explains the usefulness of each of these weapons with the danger gone and the girls saved. They both bow down to Kanon for saving their lives. However, the night girl Rina senses something off and takes out her sword. She warns Arisia not to let her guard down just yet because Kanon is dressed in shady fashion. Our hero tries to tell the girls that all is well, but he realizes that he's using his voice camouflage move. He clears out the confusion and assures the girls that they are in safe hands now. Arisia is upset with Rina for accusing Kanon right after he saved their lives. After all, he could have just let the goblins have their fun if he wanted to harm the girls. The night girl admits her mistake and apologizes to our hero, after which she thanks him once again for his services. Now, Arisia makes an introduction as the princess of this kingdom, and her body is curvier than Rina's. Our hero knows her from the games he's played before, especially Dungeon Seed, where she is actually a villain who gets in the way of the hero exploring the dungeon. She can also be called Ari, and her body is so curvy that she always stands out from all the other characters of the game. At the same time, she is a magician who uses her powers to get her way in any situation. Rina also happens to be a character in Dungeon Seed, and she is quite curvy as well, which is why she is quite popular with a lot of gamers. She is Ari's bodyguard and a master swordswoman who comes from a duchess's family. The cute girls now decide to tell Kanon how they ended up here in the first place. It so happens that they had come to this cave with a hero named Albat and his sister Yuria. Ari was given some spirit rituals by her family, and she had to set up a spirit's altar as per the royal family's demands. By this time, the news of the goblin nest had reached everywhere, so the village nearest to the cave was worried. Their village chief sent in a request to the guild for some help, but Albat let his impulses take over and he rushed into the cave without even thinking about a plan of action. He does have a holy sword with him, but that is not going to be of much help if you don't know how to use it. Now that Kanon knows exactly what has gone down, he mocks Ari and Rina for being silly. He says it's common for people to know that goblins work very well when they are in groups, even though they might be weak when alone. It simply does not make sense to go and attack them inside their own nest, as it would only do more harm than good. Our hero even laments the fact that he ended up wasting his time on such silly girls. He goes on to say that he should have just turned a blind eye to the girls, but this is luckily said in his mind. Even so, Rina doesn't like what he has in mind, but the night girl says that the holy sword is her family's treasure and she needs to get it back no matter what the cost may be. Honestly, Kanon only wants to complete the quest and report it back to the guild. But now he has more tasks cut out for him. His intrusive thoughts take over and he imagines having both Ari and Rina as part of his harem. After all, our hero wants to become a dungeon master, so he will need some cute slaves to give him company. He can only think of round, curvy objects, but manages to keep these thoughts to himself for now. Kanon now teams up with the girls and tells them that he is in charge now. He will give the orders now, so he wonders what kind of boss goblin awaits him at the end of this nest. There are 3 types of bosses he can encounter, and they are Emperor, General, Lord, and King. First of all, he will need to check the stats of Ari and Rina, because they have lost almost 40% of their HP and are also poisoned due to their encounter with the goblin boss. He is shocked to learn that the girls have come here without any antidote or medicine to combat the poison of the goblins. When he asks them about it, they simply say that they didn't have any time to prepare for it. The girls might be cute and curvy, but they are also dumb and silly for not being this vigilant. Kanon scolds them and says that they should have at least taken a healer and a carrier along with them for this mission if they wanted to succeed. The princess girl has nothing to say, but Rina explains that both Albat and Yuria had said no to this quest, but were forced to accept it due to the political pressure from a certain congregation. The night girl mentions their name to be the Upataris, and this catches our hero's attention. He is not too pleased to hear this name because he has come across them before when he had played his games. It's a tricky situation for him, but he has to fulfill his dream of violating cute girls, and he has a great chance here with Ari and Rina. He checks out his stat screen and notices 3 life forms nearby. The location is close to the innermost room of the cave, so the trio decides to get to work. They rush to the scene and find Yuria, who is not in a very good state. Rina and Ari tend to her while Kanon checks her stats and learns that she has been poisoned to the point where she only has 10% of her HP left. He wonders how Albat is doing and is surprised to see that the apparent hero is unable to win against a goblin boss even though he has a holy sword with him. He also takes a look at the goblin boss and figures that he's dealing with a general here. Kanon figures that the general goblin has a skill known as physical art, which makes it very strong. On the other hand, Albat is shown to be weak, and even the holy sword in his hand is not suited for this kind of combat. Even so, the name of this sword is Stormblinger, and it is known to have the power to destroy every kind of evil in this world. Sadly for Albat, the power of the sword is sealed, which is why he can't do much against the goblin general. Of course, Kanon is going to save his life, but he must also be careful to avoid any kind of mistake. He turns on hero mode and tells the girls to take care of Yuria while he handles the goblin general. Suddenly, the beast smacks Albat away and it looks like the apparent hero has met his end. However, upon closer inspection, he is alive, but barely. Now that Albat has been dealt with, Kanon decides to take on the goblin, but the monster turns his attention to Ari and the girls. At first, it might seem that the goblin general has intrusive thoughts of his own, but then we realize that he is unable to see Kanon due to his hidden spell. This surprises our hero because he thought that the boss would be skilled enough to detect him. Despite his disappointment, Kanon wants to make a decent fight out of this. So he stops the hidden spell and shows himself to the goblin general. It tries to attack him at full force, but this does not bother our hero at all, and he simply smacks his enemy's sword away and proceeds to smash him away. As expected, Rina and Ari are blown away by his skills because this is also physical art. They actually can't even figure if Kanon is using his hands or a hidden weapon, but none of that matters because the goblin general is barely able to stand up now. Kanon strikes a pose to mock his enemy, and it only incites the monster boss to attack him one more time. He thinks he's gotten a strike in, but it does nothing to our hero and he activates savage mode after this. Within the blink of an eye, Kanon slices through the goblin general as if his head was a block of cheese. With that, the monster finally falls to the ground and the girls just stand there in shock and amazement. They are still just standing and staring, but our hero doesn't have time to waste, so he says that the mission is completed now. The group decides to head back to the main village where everyone is glad to see all of them alive. As expected, Garand is also here and he greets Kanon with a smile on his face. He does not know what has happened to Albat, but that doesn't even matter to him at this point. All he cares about is Ari because she is the princess, but Kanon believes that Albat is actually a very shady man. After all, he is just acting like a lazy guard and causing harm to the ones he is supposed to keep safe from harm. Anyway, Kanon doesn't want to be around him anymore, so he says goodbye to the girls. This makes both Ari and Rina feel a bit weird and Garand notices this as well. Kanon has no idea of what's going on, but Garand simply says that the princess must be tired after all the stress she had gone through today. She needs to get some rest and prepare for the spirit rituals the next day anyway. Garand now tells Kanon that he should not leave so soon, as he has something he would like to show him. They go to a cabin cottage where Kanon explains that Ari got into danger due to the fact that Albat got too excited. He was the one who ended up saving the girls, and Garand is thankful to him for that. He also learns of the Upataris being involved, and he figures it was all a greedy scheme put together by the congregation men. The way Garand is speaking gives Kanon an idea of what he's going to ask from him, so he confirms that he will have to guard the cute girls till the ceremony. Garand can sense that our hero is not too pleased with this task, so he asks him about it. Kanon knows that he doesn't have much of a choice, so he will protect the curvy princess from danger. However, he does need some kind of motivation to keep doing these tasks. Otherwise, he will have no joy left in his life. Garand knows what he means, so he offers to raise Kanon's rank to B for his efforts. On top of that, he will reward our hero with 10 million Gs, which is like the currency of this world. Kanon has no issues when it comes to money, but he does want to take on more interesting quests, so the idea of getting a rank promotion works in his favor. He accepts the job, and then we see Ari asking her teacher to take care of her. Of course, she is referring to our hero because he is also a mage, which puts her under his category. Being called the sensei of a princess does have a nice ring to it, so Kanon doesn't mind the attention from his curvy disciple. We move to the nighttime now, where our hero is busy warming up a fire. Meanwhile, Ari, Rina, and Yuria have a cute bath together and gossip about our hero. Now, we move back to our hero who is missing out on some amazing action if he would have just let his intrusive thoughts take over. However, he doesn't mind sitting in front of the fire and being the guard to 3 cute girls. He never did this in his previous life, so it's a nice experience for him. Albat is shown to be sleeping and snoring, which only provokes our hero because he thinks the fake hero is a useless piece of trash who should be ended. However, there is no point in doing such a thing to a useless man because he is most likely just a scam hero who has been sent by the Yupataris. It looks like there is some kind of power struggle going on, so it doesn't make sense to end Albat just yet. After all, Kanon needs to find out the main brains behind this whole operation. Now, our hero lets his intrusive thoughts take over while worrying about Rina and Ari. Basically, they will be targets at the congregation, so Kanon will need to do something to keep them protected. One thing that comes to his mind is that both Rina and Ari are unmarried, which means that he can detect their presence with a special spell. Kanon takes a lot of time to prepare his plan, because he knows he can't mess it up with so many plays in place. He holds the holy sword and senses something wrong with it, which is somewhat similar to a sensation he has felt before. He moves it around for a bit and finally manages to understand something about it. Kanon says that it is very important to take note of this, especially because of his reincarnation into another world. With that, Kanon figures that he must do his best to ensure his future wives have a comfy bath right now as per his twisted fantasy. Now, it's time for us to get some context so that we can understand the spirit ceremony a bit better. Basically, it is a hereditary ritual of the royal family which is performed in order to receive the protection of the Holy Spirits. Whenever a person of royal blood reaches the age of 15, they must go to the spirit tree to perform this ritual. However, due to the odd actions of the Empire and the recent arrival of the fake hero Albat, the Covenant has come to a standstill. This is why it's up to our real hero to plant the saplings of the spirit tree in a suitable area for his cute girl. But the ancient covenant violated now. The requests of the spirit tree need to be carried out, and Kanon does so with ease. He goes to Garen the next day to tell him that he has done what was asked of him. So the guild man thanks him but also says that he looks forward to seeing him again. This is not good news for Kanon, so he decides to be calm and walk away before he is hit with more quests. At that very moment, Princess Ari shows up looking cute and innocent. She wants Kanon to reconsider her request of him traveling with her and Rina. This is an offer too good to refuse. But our hero fights his intrusive thoughts and simply thanks Ari for speaking so kindly to a low-life adventurer like himself. He explains that their paths are just too different. Kanon asks for forgiveness and continues on his journey, but Albat has something to say. Since he has informed the guild about the status of the quest and Princess Ari's safety, it would make sense for them to return to the city for now and report their findings to the king. Rina agrees with him even though it's a pity that they will not get to travel with Kanon anymore. With this statement, everyone else in the group agrees that one magician should be more than enough, and Kanon should not be needed for such a simple task. It can't be helped, so the team heads to the palace. Before that, Princess Ari bids farewell to Kanon and hopes to see him again so that she can learn more from him. Our hero is an alpha male, so he doesn't show any signs of affection, but Garand is a bit surprised by the way he has dealt with this situation. After all, this was a great chance for Kanon to get promoted to a royal magician. Kanon thinks with a straight mind, so he explains that the life of a royal boy inside a palace is not what he's made for. Also, he would never want to breathe the same air as Albat, because he is a totally useless guard. Garen sees sense in what he says, so Kanon finally leaves for good, but not without hearing that he will be called upon again when there is a new mission. Of course, this situation with Albin is far from over, so Kanon decides to use his brain for some time. He figures that the fake hero is the heir of a baron and has been engaged to the daughter of an aristocrat ever since he was a kid. His sister Yuria, on the other hand, just seems to be a girl with a brother complex. It's at this moment where he realizes that maybe letting Albat and his sister team up with Rina and Ari could lead to more problems. After all, the fake hero did leave his fiancée back at home just so that he could follow Ari around. It's time to do the math because Ari is a princess and Rina is the daughter of a duke. Not just that, her father happens to be one of the 3 most powerful Grand Dukes of this kingdom. This means that there is a lot of power resting above these curvy girls. However, our hero is nothing compared to the status of these girls because he is just a normal boy in this world, even though he has powers matching those of a god. He doesn't have a home or even a title, so it would normally not make any sense to travel with such high-profile babes. Kanon wonders if he should use some tricks to become a noble, but decides against it because it is not the right way forward. He activates demon mode and says that he will create his own dungeon and then make these girls kneel in front of him, as if they are his slaves. Kanon also tells us that this world is very similar to Dungeon Seed, which had actually crashed in the real world a few months ago. In that game, this group of 4 were all the villains, and this includes the curvy girls as well. Since our hero had cleared the game back on Earth, he has a fair idea of what these characters might end up doing. Also, if they are within his range, then the light spirit's protection will also be rendered ineffective. He starts to sound a bit of a shady character when he says that he is going to lure this team into his dungeon and separate them one after the other, eventually capturing them all and making them his slaves. Of course, the main aim is to build a dungeon where he can act on all his intrusive thoughts, but Kanon also wants to get a taste of Albat's future wife. He goes back to his inn and learns that he has received a letter in his room. Kanon was not expecting to hear this, so he decides to check out what he's got. He also realizes that he had a slave market to attend, but got distracted by the mission involving the goblin nest. He is finally able to enter one now, and he sees lots of cute girls being put up for sale. They are referred to as goods, and the only people that can be seen are filthy rich nobles. Kanon doesn't appreciate the look and feel of this place, so he figures he won't take much time here. All he has to do is find a girl who catches his attention the same way Ari and Rina did. Suddenly, he comes across a total babe, and it's the same girl whom he had seen last time. Our hero is not going to just stand there and wait, so he goes to the curvy girl and asks for some help. The girl does not respond to him, so Kanon is left feeling a bit awkward. He tries to reach out to her again and again, but with no luck. Finally, he says that he won't take much of her time, so the least she can do is turn to him and reveal her cute face. The slave girl finally listens to Kanon, but implies that there's nothing she can do to help him out here. She seems to recognize our hero from last time, so she pauses for a second and he notices this. Kanon is glad that such a curvy girl has remembered his face, so he recalls the time they first saw each other. The slave girl states that it was when she was being taken away, and that's when an idea strikes Kanon. He makes an odd face and starts talking about how he does not have a very memorable look. He even goes on to say that he is not an interesting person at all, which means that the slave girl has a great sense of memory. The slave girl is a bit shocked to see such an overpowered hero acting this way, but Kanon continues with his baby act and whines about how such cute girls have such bad taste in men. On top of that, these odd men have odd hobbies as well, which makes it even worse for Kanon. The slave girl blushes, and that's when we learn that she is actually a character that he had created himself in the game. As expected, he went to great lengths to create her perfect body, so there is no way he can forget her. This makes him wonder if Gaia had intentionally left this slave girl here for him. Kanon can't stop his intrusive thoughts because he keeps staring at her for obvious reasons. He can never get bored of doing this, especially since the slave girl was awarded with being one of the top 3 customized characters in the game. The slave girl asks Kanon what kind of question he had for her, so he proceeds to say it. Our hero asks the slave girl why she isn't running away because he knows she has enough power to do so. Kanon had checked her fighting stats and learned that she is good enough to be his sidekick. It is a huge mystery that she is allowing herself to suffer this way when she has such amazing stats. The slave girl just sits there feeling shy, so Kanon asks her if she's even listening to him. He goes on to ask a rather sensitive question, and this makes her blush. This is when she finally reveals that she can't do anything because she is a slave. As per the rules, she can only sit here and wait until someone comes and buys her. Our hero can't believe what he is hearing, because it sounds rather funny. The slave girl points to a slave collar on her neck and reveals that it defines her fate. Kanon figures that she has accepted her fate, so it makes more sense to him now. The slave girl continues by saying she does not have any of the things that a normal girl would have. There are no friends, family members, or even a hometown to run back to, so all she can do is wait for her master to come and buy her. This strikes a chord with our hero because she reminds him of his own past life. He actually has no memories of his old life on Earth because Gaia had made sure to erase all of them. He has a thought in his head, but remains silent, so the slave girl asks him why he isn't saying anything. Our hero calmly decides to walk away from the scene and apologizes to the slave girl for wasting her time. She feels some kind of passion for him, so she asks him to wait, but Kanon leaves the scene by then. Now, it's time to kick off the auction with all the curvy girls up for grabs. Even Kanon is seen striking a pose while trying to act like an alpha male. We take a look at slave number 11, and she happens to be among the top 3 demi-human slaves in this world. She is the curviest out of all her sisters, which is why her bid starts at 10 million fantasy dollars. It's time to start the bidding war. And as expected, the customers go crazy with their bids. The amount goes from 10 million to 130 million in no time. But this is only the beginning for this slave girl. She is clearly not happy with her presence at the auction, but there's nothing she can do about it. The slave girl is eventually sold for 150 million fantasy dollars to a bald man who makes a shady face. Kanon is amazed to see him because he is very old, but even then, he has enough passion to act on his intrusive thoughts. However, the slave girl panics upon seeing the bald man, which means that she is fearing the worst with him. Now, Kanon assesses the situation and reminds us that he is looking for slaves who can help him capture the fake hero Albat's fiancé. He will need to travel for a while to get to his target zone. And when he does that, he will basically be starting a war. Looking at the slave girl, Kanon can sense that she has useful abilities which he will need for his mission, so it would be a waste to pass her by like this. The look on her face makes our hero feel even worse for her, but it's time to look at the final item of the day, and she is quite a catch. The auction man announces her as having long platinum hair, smooth skin without a single blemish, and bright emerald eyes as well. She is none other than the slave girl who was created by Kanon's intrusive thoughts, and it turns out that she is actually a dark elf girl. The shady bald man wastes no time and instantly offers 200 million fantasy dollars for her. It seems like an easy win, but then someone counters him with $300 million. The bald man thinks this person is joking, but that isn't the case. So he raises the bid by $10 million. As expected, this bidding competitor is Kanon himself, and he counters with $400 million. The elf girl can't believe her eyes because Conan is technically the man of her dreams. She looks at him with intent in her eyes, because our hero is surely going to be her savior in this story. Of course, this can only happen if he actually wins the auction. The bidding war continues as the bald man states $450 million, which should sound like a good deal. However, even this amount does nothing to sway Conan away, because he instantly counters the offer with $600 million. It's easy for him to do this because he has made a lot of money completing his missions, especially the ones where Princess Ari was involved. Even so, this is an amazing display of wealth, so the auction man asks if anyone else would like to offer a higher price for the elf girl. The bald man starts to sweat because he knows he cannot offer more money, especially because he has already paid so much money for the earlier slave girl. He has to accept defeat in front of everyone. And with that, the elf girl is officially sold to our hero for the ridiculous price of 600 million fantasy dollars. Things kick off instantly between Kanon and the elf girl as he tests out her powers on one of the guards who had been sent to attack them, probably for stealing the bald man's target girl. She takes him down with ease, and it pleases our hero to see that his money has been spent wisely. The elf girl asks Kanon what they are going to do next, and it looks like they'll be heading back to his base. However, there is one more thing that Kanon needs to do, and he wants to act fast. We shift to a carriage where the bald man calls his new slave girl Yummy, which means that a rescue mission might be in the works. Suddenly, the elf girl says some odd words, so our hero asks her if all is well. She says that it's not what it seems like because these are the names of the people who had hired the guards to attack them. The only things on Kanon's mind are the 2 bouncing hills in front of him, but he eventually comes to his senses and figures one of the names to be Goria, which sounds like a marquee. Our hero realizes that Goria might be the name of the bald man who tried to have him attacked, and now he wants to get back at him for what he did. He also congratulates his new slave girl on doing her job well. She has a cute smile on her face, which is good for our hero because he had thought that it might be a task to talk to her. As a matter of fact, her face glows up because of this compliment. The elf girl asks Kanon what it was that he wanted to do, and he acts forgetful for a second. Then, he suddenly says that they need to stock up on necessities because they have a long journey ahead of them. The elf girl gets an introduction from her new master, and finally reveals her name to be Shira. She is a descendant of the dark elf clan known as Zard, so she is definitely a capable fighter. Now that the formalities are out of the way, Kanon tells her that she will need to follow him and keep up with his speed as well. After all, he is going to teach the bald man a lesson for trying to act smart with him. Now, we shift back to the carriage where the bald man is staring at his new slave girl. His intrusive thoughts get the better of him and he keeps fantasizing about what he is going to do to her. He also expects to have Shira as well because of the assassins he had hired to get rid of Kanon. He actually wants to have our hero's head, or even torture him alive for making fun of him at the auction. After all, to be humiliated like that in front of so many people is pretty bad for a man like him. Anyway, there is no point thinking about such things, so he would like to enjoy some dessert before he gets to the main course. He calls out to the slave girl and tells her to sit on his lap. She clearly does not want to do this, but since she is a slave, she has no other choice. She proceeds to do as he says, and what follows is not a very pleasant sight. The bald man asks her not hold back her voice, but she is very embarrassed by what's going on. Things are about to go from bad to worse, but then the both of them are interrupted by a sudden force that approaches the carriage. It is none other than our hero Kanon, who is moving at super speed to keep up with the vehicle. He jumps over the carriage and causes it to stop, which makes the bald man anxious. He wants to continue with his shady acts, but wants to know why everything has come to a standstill. It's at this moment when someone from outside says that it's an ambush. The bald man sticks his head out of the carriage window and asks what's going on. One of his men reveals that there might be bandits ahead of them, because the escorts in front have been attacked. He asks his boss to stay inside the carriage and let them handle the commotion. The guard men rush ahead and plan to get rid of the bandits using teamwork. However, when they see one of the escorts running towards them, they notice that he is getting slashed in front of their eyes. The guards watch on in shock and disbelief as the escort falls into pieces, and in front of them is Kanon, who is in demon mode. The guards try to threaten our hero, but it's of no use as he jumps high up into the air to escape their line of vision. He uses this skill to tear into the guards one after the other without them even realizing what they're up against. Eventually, only one man remains, so he asks Kanon why he doesn't show himself. This is all in panic, so he tries to run away, but Kanon shows up from behind and tells him not to shout so much. He decides to mock the guardman some more because he was the one who issued the threat in the first place. Our hero grabs his victim from behind and is about to slice him to bits, but first, he asks him to repeat what he said earlier about taking his life. The guardman has nothing to say, so Kanon holds his knife close to a rather sensitive spot. The guardman says please, but our hero can't hear what he's saying at all. He continues to mock the guardman, who begs for his life like a little girl, but it's too late for such a request. The guardman says that he had taken this job for a reason, which was to provide for his family. He has kids and a mother to take care of, and he was only doing this because he was hired by the bald noble. Kanon lets the guardman believe that he is going to spare his life, and then slashes his head off without any care in the world. It's time to go to the carriage, where the bald man begins to panic once again. There is no noise coming from outside, so he wonders what has gone down. His anxiety is through the roof, and that's when he reveals that he is indeed the Marquis of Goria. The only fate for offending such a noble is the life sentence. So Goria wants to know what kind of bandits are after him. He calls out to his guardmen and tells them to bring the heads of the bandits to him. However, he has it all wrong because there is only one attacker and he is most definitely not a bandit. Kanon takes this as his chance to make an entrance, and he ensures that he makes a mark by keeping the head of the guardman he just attacked in his hand. Our hero opens the door to the carriage and can see what Goria has been doing to the cute slave girl. He realizes that he is walking in on someone else having fun, so he says sorry for the intrusion. Obviously, Goria is in a state of fear now because in front of him is an overpowered warrior in demon mode. Now, Kanon shows himself in all his scary might, especially with the head of the guard, and he asks the noble Goria if he can borrow a few moments of his time. How is our hero going to deal with Goria? Also, is he going to make his slave girl his new toy, just like Shira? Before we continue to what happens to the bald man, we move back in time to see what Kanon was doing when he caught up to the carriage. At this point, our hero started to strategize on how he would end up rescuing the slave girl Goria, whose actual name is Eldoria. He was also considering adding her to his harem along with Shira, because her curvy body is every man's dream. Kanon figured that the carriage in the middle had to be the one with Eldoria and the shady bald man, because the escort carriages are always in front and behind. This was all he needed to assess, because his next plan was to make sure the shameless noble got what he deserved. It turned out that one of the guards actually spoke about how the bald man had no end to his intrusive thoughts. This is because he is known to purchase slave girls as many times as he possibly can. Of course, the other guard told him to keep his mouth shut, otherwise they won't get paid for their services. Suddenly, the horses stopped, and the men tried to figure out what went wrong. The horses got shocked because something had fallen right in front of them, and it turned out to be the body of one of the escort guards. Seeing this, the men started to panic, and one of them tried to alert the guards at the back. But then he saw that his own colleague's head got chopped off. As the guard tried to make sense of this situation, he turned back around and saw our hero sitting on top of the carriage with the head of his colleague in his hand. Kenon was asked for his identity, but he only smiled while tossing aside the head of his victim, and this led to an alert being sounded. What followed was the massacre we saw earlier, and now we are back to the present where Kenon is taking an area away from the shady bald man. Despite not having any leverage on his side, the bald man calls out to Kenon and says that he should not be stealing his slave. Of course, Kenon does not even bother to respond to him. But then the bald man calls out to the lone surviving guard and tells him to end our hero in exchange for a handsome reward. The bald man tries to paint a rosy picture by telling the survivor that no one will ever pay him such a huge sum, and this seems to be enough to push the survivor over to the dark side. Of course, Kenon is only surprised because he did not realize that he spared the life of one guard. Anyway, it doesn't matter to him because he is going to finish him off even as the guard tries to attack him. Our hero unleashes a brutal attack that slices the guard's whole body into tiny bits, and it only takes him a few seconds to get the job done. Kenon is very proud of what he has just done because it seems to be a replication of his favorite move. He then looks at the bald man with a shady smile, after which he is asked how he was able to end so many private guards. Kenon can only laugh and talk about how this is his favorite thing to do. If the bald man does not understand it, he's fine with it. But then he notices that someone else has come to the scene. He notices that it's Shira, who has made it quite quickly, even though she looks a bit tired from all the running. Kenon comments on how she has reached her so quickly, and then she says that she was only able to do so because of the shoes he has given her. Shira apologizes for taking too much time, but our hero is glad to see his slave girl being so proactive. He believes that she has reached sooner than he had expected her to, so it's all good. Now, he asks Shira to do him a favor, and then he hands over an area to her, so that she can take care of his new slave girl. Kenon has realized that the bald man may have used some substances to dull an area, so that she could do as he pleased. This is why it would be best for Shira to be with her for now, so that Kenon can have a word with her after she recovers. Our hero then tells his slave girl that he will be joining her a little later as he has some unfinished business to deal with. Before the girls leave, Kenon also makes sure to claim the bald man's slave seal so that he can have no further control over an area. This makes Shira happy, and then she is given permission to leave the scene with an area. Now that the men are alone, Kenon says it's time for them to have a conversation. Of course, this spooks out the bald man, and he has the look of terror on his face. Kenon teases him by asking what's wrong, and then he jokes around by saying the bald man should not make him too anxious. First, he explains why he did all these brutal things to take an area away from the bald man, which means he finally reveals that he was the one who defeated him in the auction. Kenon knows that the bald man had sent his assassins to take his life, and also steal Shira, so what he's doing her is nothing more than a bit of payback. Our hero tells the bald man that he should not have thought he would get away with such cheap tricks, and then he grabs his face. Kenon then says that this is a very rare opportunity for the bald man because he is going to hear his biggest secret. Now, our hero tells him that he has already lost his life once, but he is not a zombie. He was simply reincarnated into this world by the ruling goddess. This implies that he wants to enjoy his life here and stay away from trouble. So anyone who is after his life is basically in for some bad news. The bald man is asked how he is feeling now that his life is about to end. It could be fear, trauma, or any other sensation. But the point is that the bald man wanted our hero to feel the same thing not too long ago. As expected, the bald man has no idea what Kenon is trying to tell him, so he asks if our hero has gone mad. Kenon states that he knows exactly what he's talking about because he has been through death before. Due to this, he feels more excited, especially as he toys with the bald man's life. As Kenon continues to talk about how his demon behavior plays into his learning, the bald man has nothing to say and is completely confused. Seeing that he has no other role to play here, our hero decides to finish off the bald man as soon as he can. He has never taken lives before, but since the goddess has allowed him to live a new life, he should try to behave differently. The bald man panics, but there is no escaping Kanon as he decides to relieve all his stress by ending him. Our hero strikes a scary pose as he asks the bald man how he would like him to finish his life. He also comments that the bald man has a knack for gaining enmity from others, so in all probability, he should be given vengeance. This feeling will come in handy for the baldy if he is ever to get reincarnated, but we will never know if that actually happens to anyone other than Kanon. Now, we move to the night time where Kanon is seen resting in bed at the safe house. He laments that ending other people to relieve his own stress has not worked out the way he would have wanted it to. We learn that he had used the dismember spell, which worked out, but also took a huge strain on his body. This is real life, and not a game that Kanon can play with a mouse and a keyboard, so he has to adjust accordingly. A lot of things have happened today, and one of them happens to be Kanon purchasing Shira as his slave girl. Our hero's intrusive thoughts are awakened once again, but he reminds himself that he can't force Shira to do anything shady with him. After all, if he ends up behaving this way, then he will not be any different from the bald man he just ended. It's at this very moment that our hero realizes that his body is still untouched in this world, and that is not a good thing for him at all. This is because he may not be able to control his elephant in front of Shira, and if he does whip it out, then he could turn out to be a one-pump chump. It would be rather embarrassing for him if such a thing were to happen. And then he hears a knock on the door, which makes him panic. Regardless, Kanon becomes a bit serious and tells Shira to lock the door after she enters. Of course, he is panicking in his head while saying this, but he has to keep up a cool persona in front of his slave girl. Shira simply does as her master says, and she is looking quite tempting with her outfit. What follows is an interesting night for our hero. Kanon asks Shira why she has come to him so late at night, and he wonders if it's because she can't sleep by herself. The slave girl is about to provide her answer, but before she can do so, she notices something rising from below. At first, Kanon thinks that something is wrong with his feet, but then he notices that his elephant is standing up to say hi. It's rather instantaneous, so Kanon is impressed by his vigor. We can only imagine what happens next, but first, we are taken to a brief flashback some time before this incident. Our hero asks Shira and Eldoria if they are done changing their clothes, and he also apologizes for not having anything more than normal t-shirts. The slave girls don't have a problem with this at all, because it is their first time being given proper clothes. Shira even says that she should be the one thanking her master for providing her with these t-shirts. She comments that it fits nicely against her curvy body, and she likes the design as well. Eldoria, on the other hand, wants to know what's written on her own t-shirt, and it happens to be the words heavy charge. This is not too far off from describing her own soft pillows, and Kanon laments that these clothes are simply charging up his own intrusive thoughts. It's almost as if the girls are being given rewards for some game show. But our hero must control his shady desires, so he asks Shira to get the food ready. As she does this, Eldoria asks Kanon to give an introduction. He does so instantly, and then she reveals that her family name is Fuon. Eldoria also says that Kanon can refer to her as Anna, and that her father used to be a duke. As a matter of fact, she used to live in the royal capital with him because he had earned the respect of the king through his services. Anna's father was granted private land at first, but then he got married to a beast woman without the king's consent. This led to him getting deprived of his private land as well as his nobility privilege. Since Anna's mom was no more, she and her dad tried their hand at commercial business, and it was going well till a certain point. However, one failure in a big trade led to Anna's dad getting caught up in a massive circle of debt. He could not deal with it anymore, so he decided to take his own life, and this left Anna to work as a maid girl in order to pay off the debt her dad left behind. Kenan does not find this to be very unique, as he has read lots of manga comics, where the cute girl ends up turning into a slave to pay off her family's debts. Having said that, Anna's story still sounds tragic. She also answered Kenan's question with extra information, so it implies that she is a very obedient girl. Kenan does a character study of Anna, and he believes that she is not the brightest bulb on the planet, but she does have a genuine personality. As a matter of fact, she could have been a lot livelier if she did not have to face such a harsh reality. After considering everything around him, Kenan decides to offer a choice to Anna, and he says that she can either continue her life as someone else's slave, or she can become his own slave girl in addition to Shira. If she does this, then she can spend his reward money however she likes. Of course, Kenan would never say no to such a curvy babe. But is he planning on doing shady things with both Shira and Anna?
Kenan does tell Anna that she should definitely take her time to consider this decision, but he maintains that he will accept whatever she chooses. He then tells her that if she does not want to choose any of the options that he is providing her, then she should definitely leave his house. He also states that it would be better if Anna could give him her answer before tomorrow morning. Later on, Kenan is served dinner by Shira, who apologizes for taking time. Our hero asks her and Anna where their rations are, but Shira says that the girls don't deserve to sit and eat with him because they are slaves. This is because of the low status given to slave girls, but Kenan does not want to hear any of this. He is sick and tired of eating alone, so he tells his slave girls that they should eat together. He wants them all to enjoy their time together, at least when they are having meals, but he also feels sad that his girls need to be commanded to follow him. Our hero then begs both Shira and Anna not to make him order them to sit and eat with him. This shocks them, and then Kenan says he will prepare some simple dishes for them. The girls should get to know each other in the meantime, and they are still trying to figure out why their master has given them so much leeway. As he prepares the meals for his slaves, Kenan wonders why he is feeling so uncomfortable. This is probably because his current situation reminds him of the last time he was an escort for curvy babes, and it is just a reaction to his surroundings. Considering all of this, it would be best for him to do hidden jobs in the darkness to maintain the mystery around him. He does not know if he can get along well with his slave girls, but he does get a lot of overflowing feelings whenever he thinks of the girl he has just saved. What he is mainly feeling right now is regret over the sight of a cute girl shedding tears in front of him. Kenan is familiar with this sight because of the memories of his past life. This was back when he could not deal with society any longer, which led to both his body and soul feeling as if they were being ripped apart. The last thing Kenan remembers seeing is the face of a newly hired woman who had to put in extra hours and even work on the weekends. This left her face filled with tears, which is never a pleasant sight. The worst part is that our hero recalls never even wanting to help this poor girl back then. However, he did offer her support towards the end, which is why he can sense those feelings even now. Even though he himself was powerless and helpless in his past life, Kenan still helped those in need. This time, he will be able to fulfill what he was never able to do before. Basically, our hero does not want to live a life full of regrets anymore. Now, he comes back to his girls with their food and asks them if they became acquainted in this much time. They say yes, so it's time to dig in. Kenan tells Anna and Shira that their work performance relies heavily on the condition of their bodies, which is why it is important to eat food and get rest without pushing themselves too hard. Anna and Shira can both smell the fragrance from the dishes, and they comment on how it's been a while since they last got to enjoy a delicious meal. Kenan feels as though he is missing something right now, but then he gets distracted when he sees Anna crying out of joy in front of him. He wants to know what the matter is, but it turns out that she simply finds the food to be delicious, which is why she is crying. Shira feels the same way, as she looks at her master and gives him a cute smile, which takes him aback for a moment. He realizes that he was awkwardly staring at his slave girls, so he says sorry and proceeds to eat his food as well. He then thanks them, although they ask him why he is saying that. After all, they should be the ones thanking him for giving them a chance at a second life. Anyway, Kanan wishes both his girls a happy meal before eating his food, and they ask him what this statement means. Shara wonders if this is some kind of cult ritual, but our hero says that it is simply a tradition from his original world. He tells them that they don't need to mind it, but they both also wish him the same to make their master feel better. Anna and Shara both smile at Kanan quite cutely, and it brings a smile to his face, but he needs to maintain his Sigma male persona, so he shrugs it off and focuses on his food. The slave girls wonder if they did it wrong, but Kanan simply says that they make him feel as if he is with his children. Anna and Shara can't believe it for a second, but then they realize that it's rather adorable for their master to consider them as his children. Later in the night, Shara comes to Kanan's room and it looks like they are both going to act on their intrusive thoughts. Kanan falls asleep after an intense session, but then he wakes up in some kind of heavenly garden. He wonders if he is dreaming right now, but then he gets greeted by someone else. It turns out to be an extremely cute and curvy babe who introduces herself as a goddess, meaning Kanan's new life just got a whole lot more interesting. At first, our hero can't believe what he is hearing and wonders if this girl is actually crazy for calling herself a goddess. However, the goddess simply lets out tears of joy and congratulates Kanan for being able to make it till this point. Kanan quickly realizes that this is the same girl he had seen in the first message when he came to this world. It's their first time seeing each other, but Kanan maintains that the goddess is actually a cosplay girl. Anyway, Kanan asks this goddess if her name is Gaia's, the great god of earth. He had originally thought that he would be meeting a male god, but instead, he has been given a rather pleasant treat. Gaia's confirms that she is indeed the person Kanan believes her to be, and she holds the life, chaos, and stability of this new world. She further explains that even though she is a goddess, she has the power to transform into a male god as well. This is probably why the people on Earth look at her as a man, but her focus now is on our hero. She explains that when she first brought Kanan to this world, she had a lot of work to do, so she could only send him a message. However, now that he has been able to progress so far and even clap the elf slave girl Shara, the both of them can finally meet in person. Kanan wants to ask Gaia's a question and he wants her to answer properly, so she says yes, but only as long as his question does not have anything to do with her age. The most important thing our hero wants to know is regarding his old body, which is from his past life. He knows that he has already passed away in that world, but he still wishes to know the state of his physical body. The goddess answers that Kanan has already been cremated and his body is turned to ashes. At the same time, she says that there is no need for him to worry so much about that body because he was just an otaku boy with no social life back then. There's no point for him to be thinking about the old world. But Kanan does not appreciate Gaia's trying to act funny regarding his passing. The goddess wonders if our hero still wants to return to his old world, to which he says yes and asks for help. Unfortunately for him, Gaia's reveals that she did have a word with the god of his world when he had passed, but he refused her request to reincarnate Kanan back into his own world. Basically, this was why she decided to have him reincarnated into her world instead. She then asks Kanan if he has any other questions for her. So he asks her about his golden law X. This helps him have unlimited money, no matter how much he spends from his wallet, so he wonders if this is a permanent skill with no limits. Gaia's explains that ever since Kanan reincarnated here, the data from Valkyrie Chronicles was immediately transferred along with his soul. This means that the unlimited money hack is a permanent skill, and our hero will never need to worry about running out of cash. However, this only applies as long as he doesn't lose his money powers. Canon is confused for a bit, so the goddess states that there are skills which can be used to deprive other skills even if they happen to be inherent. Such skills are banned in this world, so our hero shouldn't worry about it much, but now that it has been mentioned, it's safe to assume that we'll see these skills later in the story. Canon is told that even he can't possess the stealing skills, and then he is asked if he has any other questions. He wants to know if this world is indeed based off the dungeon seed game he used to play back in Japan. This will help understand if he can create his own historical developments. Gaia states that this world is both similar and different from the dungeon seed game, and Canon should understand this because of his dark elf slave. This means that characters who appeared when Canon completed an ending in Dungeon Seed will exist independently in this world. The goddess pulls out a gaming console and shows off her curvy derriere, as she mentions our hero must be heading towards a future that is different from the Dungeon Seed ending. She then hands him the console and states that she herself is unsatisfied with the game. She is actually excited to see the future Canon creates in this new world, and then asks him if he has anything else he would like to know. Our hero is still confused about why this world is so similar to the dungeon seed he had plowed and combined with the battle system of Valkyrie Chronicle. He also realizes that there is saved data in the gaming device he has been handed over. Gaia states that the men who created these two games had subconsciously referenced this world, which intrigued the gods. They wanted to recreate elements from the two games, so they modified this world to suit that. Of course, there are still lots of things in this world that are not in the games, so it's still an original concept. Our hero has finally understood everything, but he also wants to know what Gaia's wants from him. After all, a goddess should not have so much free time that she casually chills with a human like this. Gaia's is impressed that Canon has such a strong understanding of the situation. She reveals that she has come to give him another active skill, which is birth magic. Canon has no idea what the goddess means by this, so she asks him if he intends to have a child with Shera. Our hero is a bit cautious because he feels that Gaia's has abruptly switched to a very sensitive topic all of a sudden. The goddess states that birth magic simply increases desires and intrusive thoughts so as to execute shady activities. In order to acquire this skill, a man needs to achieve the highest level of dark magic. Canon has already done that, as he does not even need to use charms to get Shera to do unspeakable things with him. Essentially, our hero will be using magic to penetrate the mind and slightly manipulate it. Technically speaking, it's highly sus to be using such magic, as it is mostly popular with succubus girls who want to further their generations through mating. The main problem for succubus girls is that they are not fertile, which is why this magic comes in very handy for them. Even so, this world has a very serious problem when it comes to birth rate, so the species over here are all heading towards extinction. Since mating between different species has a very low rate of fertilization, it does not look likely that Canon and Shera will have a child. But if he uses this birth magic skill, then his chances can go as high as 100%. So, Gaia's wants Canon to take this birth magic so that he can repopulate this world and save its people's races from extinction. Our hero wonders why this world had to be built in such a way, but he will need to ask the manga artist that question. As he sits there unimpressed, Gaia says that they should practice right now to try it out. She proceeds to prepare for the session, but Canon asks her why she is doing this. The goddess makes fun of him for making such a scene overseeing some delicate female garments, so he tries to reawaken his inner Giga Chad. However, Gaia says that this is the only way for her to be able to transfer the skill to him. Kanon can't believe that he will actually be able to act on his intrusive thoughts with a goddess, but this is technically some kind of soul transfer dream, so it can definitely come true. The goddess reiterates that she has to impart the skill by any means, so it does not matter what Kanon may think of the situation. After all, if the birth magic skill is to be gained, it only makes sense to transmit it via the act of mating. As Kanon still tries to digest what is being told to him, the goddess adds that apart from the senses of touch, she will also need to absorb his elephant water for this process to work. She goes on to keep Kanon's eyes wide open because she wants him to enjoy this sight thoroughly. Gaia tells our hero that if there is anything he still does not understand, then he will need to figure it out himself. As expected, he is very nervous and does not know how to go about this, so the goddess tells him to be confident. With that, Kanon awakens the power of Riz and unleashes his best skills on the goddess. He emerges victorious after an intense session, and he has left her unable to move. This is quite the achievement for our hero, but he tells Gaius that he needs to go back to his slave girls now. Suddenly, his stat bar opens up and asks him if he would like to take the god core from Gaius. He does not know what this means, but he figures it must be a trap set by the goddess, so he chooses the option of no. As he does this, our hero suddenly wakes up in his bed and wonders if everything he just saw was actually a dream or real life. At first, he really believes that he has experienced a rather spicy dream, but then he realizes that it was all true as his stat bar opens in front of him. He has indeed gained the birth magic skill, which includes life absorb and eye charming as sub-skills. Now, we move to Anna, who is screaming the word no cutely while punching a target figure. Kanon guesses that his slave girl must be imagining the doll as a very bad person, which is why she is screaming at it while she hits it. That's when we learn that Kanon is now personally training Anna. We are then taken to a flashback to a few hours ago where Shara happily greets her master with a smile. They wish each other good morning, and then Shara gets to preparing breakfast. Our hero notices Anna also sitting at the table and realizes that his slave girl has decided to stay with him after the choice he gave her earlier. Now that his harem has officially grown, Kanon tries to figure what to do today. He asks Anna if she can help Shara prepare breakfast, but the elf girl says that she will be the one to cook the food. Kanon wants to know what's wrong, so Shara reveals she had spoken to Anna earlier and learned that she has never been in the kitchen before. Our hero can't believe it, but Anna admits that she was only used by her previous masters for the purpose of cleaning the house or delivering goods. She apologizes, but Kanon says it's all right and she has nothing to feel guilty about. Shara also says that Anna can learn how to cook from now on, so she agrees to it. Is our hero going to use his slave girls for more than cooking on a regular basis? And what's going on with Gaia's? Has she managed to recover from her shady session with Kanon? Like, share, and subscribe if you like this video and want to see more of the story unfold. If this video gets some love, then I'll upload part 3 as well. See you until next time then.